Coming up today on David versus Goliath.
I reached this point where I was the lead producer of a Broadway show.
You know, my goal is global wellness through play, so let's go.
It's our 1-year anniversary. We have done 52 episodes as of last week.
But when you're starting an organization with a purpose to make change or to impact the way humans live their life or to better people's life, that takes courage.
This is the greatest thing you've ever done. Do not forget this. You want to be a stand-up comic.
Welcome to today's episode of David versus Goliath, a podcast dedicated to helping small businesses leverage technology to not only help them compete against their large competitors, but win. Your host is currently the CEO of Anthem Business Software, a 3-time Inc. 500 recipient, and a serial entrepreneur with a passion to help small businesses everywhere find, serve, and keep more customers profitably. Please join me in welcoming your host, Adam DeGraide.
Hey everyone, it's Adam DeGraide with the Q3 All-Stars right here on David versus Goliath. Right now, it is absolutely the Hurricane Edition because I'm filming this. The hurricane's about to smack down Florida any second right now, and I'm praying for all of us Floridians that it's not so bad, but I wanted to make sure I got these couple of episodes in just in case I lost power for too long. Today's episode is brought to you by AutomateMySocial.com, where you can automate 90% of your social media and never think about it again. And if you're a service-based business that doesn't offer retail or promotions or incentives, you can automate 100% of it, never have to think about it again. The software runs it so you don't have to. Check it out today at AutomateMySocial.com. You can also visit us on DavidVSGoliathPodcast.com. There you can subscribe to receive our newsletters and apply to be on the podcast, which is exactly what many of these people that you're going to see today in the highlight reel did to get on to the podcast. Well, we're going to start off today with David Carpenter. I love the title of this episode. It was episode 51. It was called Me Against Myself. This guy's trying to change the entertainment business, the live entertainment business. Check it out.
You know, as you mentioned, I've worked in entertainment, live entertainment for about 22 years now. What I am doing right now is bringing a form of technology into the live entertainment sphere that quite really hasn't been done before, right? And the reason why I'm doing it is because I grew up on video games and stories and adventure and all sorts of things that I loved in my home as a kid, right? And reading Choose Your Adventure books when I was 7 years old and playing, you know, all the Sierra video games I could get my hands on, you know, back in the late 80s, early 90s. And that was always video gaming and board gaming was always kind of a side passion because when I left college, I pursued a career that led me to Broadway, and ultimately I was a lead producer on Broadway of a show back in 2019, and there was always something about that. You know, one of the things you do when you're pursuing theatrical certainly is, you know, it is a passion, right? You are pursuing a passion. It's a really tough industry. It's a small industry by the state of things, and I was very passionate about it. But I also had all these other passions and these interests. And about back in 2017, it's just started to occur to me that I could bring these things together, right? Like into the same sphere. And that's kind of where that journey began to now what I'm doing is helping bring the next generation of experiential interactive entertainment into the world. That's literally what I'm doing right now is I'm birthing this whole new idea into the world about how it is that we interact in an entertainment realm with our customers, and a lot of it is based on how it is that we're telling our story and presenting our story. And that's what Gameotics does, right? Is that it's a platform and it's a tool that is allowing me to say there's another way to go about how we talk to people, right? There's another way to do it, and it's crazy, exciting, and fun, and really hard because no one's ever quite done this the way that I'm doing it right now.
You know, it's funny that you talked about choose your own adventure. I haven't talked about that probably in 20 years of my life. But yesterday, David, I am not kidding. I kid you not. I was just talking with one of my business partners and director of business development, and we were talking about choose your own adventures. And one of the things we were doing, we were having a negotiation with a potential client. And I said, Tommy, why don't you go back and give them a choose your own adventure? So they could do option A, option B, option C. And then we started talking about the books that we were reading when we were kids. What I used to love about those books is I choose my path. And then I'd always go back and see, what would have happened if I chose the other path. And I always ended up choosing the path typically that died right out of the gate. So,
yeah, sure. Everyone did. I mean, and they built those books specifically to do that, right? I mean, there is a methodology in creating, because those books, I mean, if you actually look up what those books are, they're actually called a game book, right? That's their classification, right? Because it's not Jane Austen, right? So and the reason why it's classified a game book is because it's a book that you play when you read it, right? It is a game. It is a puzzle that you are actively trying to figure out, and they're constructed in a way that fail out at the beginning, which if you think about modern video gaming, right? The idea that you die in the tutorial or at the beginning of a game is purpose built to get you more engaged, because it actually raises the stakes of the experience that you're having. Kind of goes back to those ideas. Is like, if you fail out in the beginning, you're like, wait a second, that means my choice has a consequence. I mean, that actually what I'm doing matters, as a reader. And that agency of experience is the thing that I'm pursuing now. In that That's idea amazing. That you have agency in your experience, and that the choice that you make in the experience matters to the experience as yourself, is a really, really powerful fundamental thing that we understand in small group board games, we understand in video gaming. And it's just not something that we brought into the live entertainment arena yet. When that's why I'm doing it.
David, it's interesting, and I really want to just reiterate to the watchers and listeners how much I've enjoyed hearing your passion for what you're doing, and how you've taken your life experience and really are trying to do something that's building a market that doesn't exist. And I think that vision is so lofty and such a Goliath versus David mentality. I love it. And I can't wait to see your success continue to grow as we go through that. And I just wanted, the watchers and listeners to know, like, that's the number one thing, man. Passion. Where do you get that passion from? Is it because it seems to be an educated passion, but there also seems to be something that is in you that you can see that others haven't seen yet. And it's so clear to you that it just burns inside of you. Tell us a little bit about that.
I think it's after a tough career in entertainment, right? A tough career in entertainment. Probably it's not an easy place, not a nice place, really. Not a forgiving place by any stretch of the imagination. And when I was in college, it's all I wanted to do, right? And I did it, right? And I'd say, when I was in my early 40s, I'm still in my early 40s, but I reached this point where I was the lead producer of a Broadway show, and your viewers probably don't understand this, but that actually is something of distinction within the industry. There are very few people. If you ever go to see a Broadway show and you're looking at the playbill program, that first producer name above title, right? That very first name is usually what we call the lead producer. That is the person who is the CEO, who is in charge of that production, right? And they are holding the responsibility. They will have partners on this, but that first name is actually really key. And I got there, right? And there are not many people in the world who have done that, right? When you take a step back. And I did it, and I was like, gosh, I've been chasing this for 20 years and I'm not happy, right? Because it was also in the midst of my former partnership breaking up. It was a really tough thing that happened. I was like, this is the thing I've been chasing for 20 years. And this is what it feels like. This is it, right? There's a little bit of that. And that's when I made that decision to pursue this idea as someone who loves gaming and video games and board games and all the, and fantasy and sci-fi and all these things, and saying, what if I take that and try and put that into my life? Because I don't want to leave live entertainment, but I don't want to do this anymore. What happens if I do that? And this has been the hardest 3 years of my life, right? Bar none, right? This has been the hardest 3 years of my life. I mean, when you are the CEO of a startup and you're sitting there on a Sunday night and saying, I got to make payroll tomorrow and I don't know how that's going to happen, right?
Yeah.
And you have to get up out of bed Monday morning and make it happen. Those are unforgiving moments that age you, right? But the fact that I get to do this now, that I get to pursue this, that I get to pursue this idea, and that people believe in me and they believe in my leadership and they believe, and they're giving me money and they're giving me validation and they're saying, hey, go with this idea, you're really onto something, is helps fuel that passion, right?
David, thank you so much for being a part of the David versus Goliath podcast. Right after that, we had one of the most awesome interviews I've ever had. As a matter of fact, I promised her I'd do some yoga poses, but I'm definitely not doing that today, but eventually I'll get to it. Her name was Bobby Hamilton, and from Chi Universe. This was a little bit of a controversial episode because some of my fans are not really into the whole yoga thing, and they're like, it's evil, it's satanic, and the others are like, this is amazing, it changed my life. And so I always like episodes like this that have a little bit of a tweak to it. It was fantastic. She's an awesome woman with a great business. Here's Bobby Hamilton. I was thinking about starting the episode today with me like in this pose, you know, the yoga pose. If you know anything about me, Bobby, I'm not a yoga expert by any stretch of the imagination. I think the last time I stretched was 1973.
Wow.
A couple of years after I was born. And, but I definitely could learn a lot. I was intrigued. I had an interview back for the watchers and listeners with a gentleman by the name of Tom Dusenberry,
Yes.
several weeks back. It was great. And he's into games, as you know. And as we just were talking, hanging out, yeah, we were just, he's on your board. Now this is all making sense.
Right.
And we were just talking afterwards. He's like, I got somebody that I think would be a great interview. And I checked out your product. The product's pretty cool. Just for the watchers and the listeners, it's Chi Universe. Chi Universe.
Oh, okay.
Right there. Oh.
Yeah, show that one. Yes.
Oh no, my producer's gonna show much better shots than that. But it's Chi Universe, everyone. And I thought it was interesting because at the end of the day, what you've got is a scenario where you're almost taking a Twister style concept from what I could see, and then turning it into something fun that families can do and learn about yoga. So why don't you tell them a little bit about Chi Universe, and then we're going to get into how you started Chi Universe and what led you to do it in the first place.
Sure. So Chi Universe, essentially our featured product is the Chi Yoga Mat and Game. And it has a symbol system on the yoga mat, which actually properly aligns the body and it gamifies yoga. So the symbol system is based on the principles of alignment and anatomical averages. So we have a kid size and we have a tween adult size. And the symbols on the mat gamify the product and really engage students for longer. And so you match the symbols on the mat with the symbols in the how-to poster that comes with it, or the symbols in the video instruction or in the game app. So you look at the images and you see the symbols, and then you try to mimic the pose on the mat using the proper symbols. And then you use your focused breathing to count how long you're in the pose.
I could use this. There's no doubt in my mind. I'm starting to feel like the older I get, I probably could use a little bit of yoga in my life. My wife loves yoga. She does yoga from time to time.
Great.
She does a lot of Pilates and things like that. And it's everything I can do to get out of bed in the morning and just power up and sit at the piano, play some guitar, do my podcast, have some fun. And my biggest problem is that I'm always on a computer, right? So in our world today, I'm either sitting in front of a camera and a microphone, or I'm doing work on or I'm playing piano, or I'm playing guitar. I'm sitting down a lot. So I think it's fantastic. And my producer, while you were describing that, was showing the watchers and the listeners some of the imagery, because it really is fun. Now, it also comes with an app. I noticed that, which was interesting. So you give away a free app on the iPad and the Android?
Yes. Currently, our iTunes app is a 10-level game, and it coordinates with the one side of the poster that comes inside of the yoga mat. And so you can earn chi points, and you work for your chi points, and it's pretty adorable, actually. But one of the things that's really exciting is that we are working towards expanding our game tech and fit tech now. So we're raising capital to expand our digital offerings. So it's interesting. You start a business, you have a vision, and then it sort of takes on a life of its own, So I love the fact that we're going to be continuing to grow and build this thing out. My goal is global wellness through play. So let's go.
Bobby, thank you for joining us on the David versus Goliath podcast. Right now, it's time for our first break from our corporate sponsor, Automate My Social. We'll be right back.
Do you own a business? Do you have or need a social media presence? If you are like most businesses, you spend either no time or too much time and money on your social media strategy, spending thousands of dollars per month only to get mediocre and inconsistent results. This leads to frustration and, in some cases, sleepless nights. Introducing AutomateMySocial.com. Automate 90% of your social media and never have to think about it again. That's right. Automate your business's social media posting and strategy like forever. Automate the essentials and customize only what's needed. Save time, save money, and get better results with AutomateMySocial.com. Our patent-pending technology gives you the ability to automatically create your social post and distribute them immediately, like in seconds, across all your social media platforms. Stop the madness of paying someone to create, post, and manage your strategy, and let our software do the work, so you don't have to. Oh, and if you're an agency or social media manager, you too can let our software do all the work, and you can get all the credit. It will be our little secret. With AutomateMySocial.com, you can have it all. It's easy to use, never complains, and never asks for time off or more benefits. See this amazing new software application at AutomateMySocial.com. If you own a business or manage client social media and want to save time, energy, money, all while increasing your return on investment, then let's get this party started at AutomateMySocial.com.
And we're back on the David versus Goliath podcast. It was so awesome. The next interviewee, I got to tell you, is probably my favorite person I've interviewed, because I didn't interview him. It was actually me. I was the next guest on episode 53. And if you missed it, you have to go back and check it out. I spent about 43 minutes telling my story. Not all of it, obviously. It's not enough time to do that. But quite a bit of information in regards to my professional career. Being the host of David versus Goliath, it was our 1-year celebration. Check it out. Well, let's get right into it today. I want to talk a little bit about why I started this podcast and, really go back to the beginning in a lot of ways, which is, all right, there's 5 smooth stones I talk about it. Every business needs to have. So you've got plans and goals, the right people, the right tools, the right process your people use the tools, and then the technology needed to be successful with it. Well, this is really, really important. I want to back up. And how did I end up becoming the host of David versus Goliath? Well, I've been very blessed in my life to have built and sold, prior to today, 3 very successful software and marketing companies. And that didn't happen on accident. There's been a lot of things in my life that have led up to the ability to do that, not the least of which is having great team members and great business partners around me. So if we were to take a step back in time and just think about where my business career began, it really began a long time ago when I was a young kid back in Coventry, Rhode Island. So my dad was a disc jockey. My grandfather was a disc jockey. My uncle and my other grandfather owned their own ad agency. I watched my mom write and record jingles, do commercials. My dad did commercials. I saw him do live commercials. I saw him open up the Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey Circus on stage. And I just had all of this talent surrounding me in my life from a marketing perspective, a music perspective. My family members have always been very musical and very much involved in that, and very entrepreneurial in nature. And so from a very young age, I had an opportunity to witness that. And I always wanted to make my own money. It's funny, I have my 7-year-old son, Anthem. He continually is trying to sell me stuff that I already own. He's like, hey, Dad, would you like your Altoids? $100. I'm like, Anthem, those are mine. You can't just sell them. And so, but I remember being, a young boy myself wanting to make money. And my mom said to me, she's like, why don't you go and be a paper boy? And I said, all right, not a bad idea. So there was the Providence Journal at the time, and I forget the other one. There was one other publication that I also delivered. But anyway, I started delivering paper at a young age, and I'd make, $20, $30 a month, basically. But it was mine. It was all my money. I was able to buy candy with it, or the most recent Star Wars action figure with it. And I think that really was the beginning of me with my entrepreneurial spirit, realizing that I could do something with my time and make money with it, and that money was going to be mine, and I would be able to do with it what I wanted to do with it. And so from the very early ages in Coventry, Rhode Island, there I am schlepping myself around on my bike, delivering papers. I did the morning and the afternoon editions at the time, and I learned a lot. I learned about consistency. I learned about service. If I didn't throw the paper in the right spot or put it in the right spot, if I had to figure out how to avoid dogs as they chased me down the road, how to time it perfectly so the ice cream man would be there right at the end of my delivery so I could grab that ice cream cone from the ice cream man. And all of these things lead up to who you are, to where I am today successfully. My career then went and worked in restaurants. I did dishes, and I worked at IGA stocking the milk section and working at a grocery store. And I kept looking around and realizing to myself that I wanted to own my own business someday. And I just knew I didn't want to run it like the guy that I worked for in his first restaurant. It was terrible, a little creepy, truth be told. But we made it through, and we learned a ton on how to serve people, how to, manage inventory, how to stock things, how things were priced, a little bit behind the scenes of what the owner thought of. And all of this stuff leads to who you are in life, right? So there's nothing that you have gone through that isn't helping you be who you are today. You're either getting better or you're getting bitter towards your life. And that all has to do with the experiences and the people we run into. You don't know where you're going if you don't know where you're going. And you can't just run something for the sake of running it. All business has a life cycle. All business has an ebb and flow. All business can have an exit. And the exit might be you leaving it to your family. Might be you handing it down. Might be you exiting to a large private equity. Might be you exiting to a strategic. Might be you failing miserably. But all of these things, by the way, are important to know where you're going. Because if you don't, you're certainly not going to get to where you can be. And one of the principles that I learned early on in business, talking about how important people are, was by a gentleman named Eustace Wolfington. I'll never forget it. I'm going to put up a picture of an acorn right now. So you're looking on the screen right now, an acorn. And he pulled this sheet up and he was just showing me the acorn. And he said, Adam, every single thing that tree will ever become is inside of this acorn. How healthy it's going to be, how tall it'll be, how long it can live, where it's going to thrive, where it's not going to thrive, its defects, its strength, its weaknesses. And that acorn has everything in it to give that tree life for the life of that tree. And then he said, now, this is really important. Everything your business can be is in you guys. And at the time, it was me and Sean Wolfington. sitting there at that table. And he said, your business will only be as healthy as you two are. It'll only grow as big as the two of you can see it. It'll be as sick as your secrets, as strong as your strengths. And the two of you have to be brutally honest with what you have in you. And then what you're lacking in that acorn, you fill in the gaps with the other people. And then that acorn, that vision and that sight that you can see, coupled with the right plans and goals, the right people, the right tools, the right process, and the courage to achieve it, can take that acorn into a massive tree. And right after that was a gentleman by the name of Cody Hall. This was not what I expected. The interview started, and he basically told me that he was no longer the CEO of the company that he applied to be a part of, that he had recently exited. The whole time I'm thinking to myself, maybe I should shut this interview down. I am so glad I didn't. It was powerful. If you missed it, it's episode 55, Cody Hall. Here's a snippet right now.
Since we've booked this podcast and since we've planned this show, I've actually exited the company. And so I did my exit, and now I'm running a nonprofit that I helped start with some military buddies of mine. But Octiva itself is still proudly going where no one's yet to go, really, and succeed. And so the organization was, like you said, it was like jumping into the deep end of the pool and never swimming before. Coming in with the support of these large, big these hospital groups who do their own thing, who go in their own direction, and then trying to reinvent the way they approach transitions of care was like fighting a giant, because every day was trying to convince everyone of why they should do something. And so with the goal of fighting inequities in healthcare, because everyone in healthcare has their goals, and those goals aren't always trying to make sure the patient gets as healthy as possible.
They're not?
I know.
I can't. You mean there's ill will and ill intentions in the healthcare community?
I can't say ill will and ill intent. I can say a blind focus on profit, though. and whatever collateral may come with that sometimes. But it's not always focused on the patient.
That's interesting. No, I didn't realize that you actually exited. That's I guess exciting for you. Is that good news for you, or was it?
Oh, absolutely.
Was it hostile or was it voluntary?
No, it was voluntary. I'm getting ready to have my first child, and I have never really thought I'd be to this point, but I've always focused on business at the cost of relationships, and I've had the opportunity to do exits before. So this has been, though I didn't think I would do it so early, it's exactly where I want to be. So taking time away, which I haven't done in a long time.
How long were you running Octiva before you ended up exiting it?
So I founded Octiva 3 years ago. So in the mid 2020. Well, 19. So yeah, it was a quick exit. I could have, like many people, you could wait around for a long time to see where the bigger deal is going to come along, the better exit's going to come. But I think getting out sometimes with achieving what you set out to achieve is just as good as, breaking the NASDAQ.
Yeah. Well, listen, everyone has different visions of what success looks like. And I think the most important thing is that you know what it looks like, and you can define it for yourself. When it comes along, you grab it, right? Because the last thing you can do is you miss it. Now, were you bought by a strategic?
Yes. So another organization came in who utilized the service of the organization and kind of took over the leadership and management. So they'll have a new Octiva CEO, but they're under their own umbrella and doing their own thing now. And so as I tell people all the time, I'm ambitious, but I'm not greedy. So it's a very big difference.
There's a huge difference between ambition and greed. No doubt about it. So that's interesting. This is a little bit of a curveball that I was throwing. I was not expecting that. So what are you doing currently right now?
So I started an organization with some veteran friends of mine called the Southern Hope Foundation. And it's an organization focused on providing affordable housing and support for people leaving rehab and prison. So we help people transitions. Which is hilarious because I also helped out with a foundation that was, when I first exited the military, that was focused on helping people transition from the military back to civilian life. Now, this is from incarceration back to the civilian world, and Octivo's from hospital back to the community. So I'm noticing a trend on this podcast.
That's right. There definitely is a trend. You know, one of the things I talk about, Cody, is, you know, David and Goliath is a great story because David was not afraid. He had courage. You know, Saul tried to get him all geared up. Hey, David, do you want my armor? Do you want my sword? David's like, I don't need any of that. I'm going to head down to the stream. I'm going to grab 5 smooth stones, and with a slingshot and an arrow and 5 stones, which I find fascinating because it only took 1 to slay the giant, but he was equipped with 5. He went out onto that field. He slayed that Philistine giant. He then lapped the dude's head off, held it up for everyone and said, my God is more powerful than your gods, basically, is what was the whole point of the story. And at the end of the day, I believe that all of us are created with something unique in us and something that we have to give to the earth. And if we're not doing that, we are robbing from people around us and we're robbing from ourselves. Now, with you in starting your first business, transitioning, I know it didn't take a lot of courage because you had somebody that said, I want you to do this. And you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to do this. But to get to that point, to pick up your bootstraps, so to speak, to get you out into the military, to get you to send that thing on the Apple. I know you didn't think you were going to get the job, but these are things that people overthink, Cody, that they never do because they're locked and they're paralyzed. For you, you talk about the thrill of jumping out of an airplane, and that's kind of what it felt like to have a startup business. What do you think, you know, for lack of a better word, I would say it's God. I don't know if you believe in God. I believe in God. But what did you think that was in you that has made you the way you are, that you're not afraid to jump and you're not afraid of the process of what that looks like?
So I believe in the universe. And I say it to my partner all the time that the universe has conspired to bring us together. And I think it conspires in a lot of different ways. And it's not from my lack of belief in a God, it's my lack of understanding in the universe. So I believe, just not quite sure what that is. And
you would fall into the category of agnostic.
Correct.
So
correct.
You know there's something or someone, you just haven't figured that part of your life out yet. I totally get it.
And courage is acting in spite of fear. So so someone's not being courageous because they do something that we define. Oh wow, that was courageous. To them, it could have just been what we think every day. I know a lot of brave guys that are brave, not courageous, because to them they do it 10 out of 10 times. And starting a company is scary. Making money is easy, but starting a company that's focus is making a difference is scary because I own 4 companies outright and I own parts of a lot of those small companies. And so it's all around us. The making money part is not what a business is meant to do. But when you're starting up an organization with a purpose to make change or to impact the way humans live their life or to better people's life, that takes courage. And because when you are experiencing the idea of making change, you're introducing something that's different, which may not be profitable, right, at first. And so I don't know what it is inside of me that causes me to do things that are scary to me. First time I jumped out of an airplane, they're like, who wants to go first? Me. They said, we're going to count to 3. I jumped on 1.
Cody, Cody, in your mind, you're thinking, I'm just going to get this over with.
Let's do this.
I think you're very similar to me, by the way. It's the waiting that kills me.
Yes.
If I'm sitting in a meeting and I'm not leading it, I'm like, wait, it's my turn to talk. You know, I think the waiting is what kills us. That's it. That's fascinating. That's interesting. What else?
I told this to I referred to my bonus daughter the other day, my stepdaughter. And I told her that while right now it may be scary, what you're going to do, what you're going to experience. But the biggest fear that you'll ever experience is when later in life you meet who you could have been if you had done the things that you were scared to do. And so I don't do it because I have something inside me. I just do it because I'm like, man, I'm more scared of what's going to happen if I don't do it. Am I going to sit around the rest of my life and say, oh, that company that I did, that thing could have been big, right? And I'm working on other projects right now and tech companies that we're in development for right now that I've been working on for over a year in my free time. And they take courage. And I apply to the philosophy of Elon Musk where when he sells an entire organization, what does he do? He takes every penny and turns around and puts it into Starlink, and he puts it into Tesla, and he just doubles down. And what happens if he fails? He loses everything. But you know what? So what? Do it again.
You know what, man? Life is not lived in the comfort center. Life is lived on the edges.
Right.
And we're going to take one more break from our final sponsor here on David versus Goliath on today's episode. We'll be right back.
At ISU RMAC Agency, we want to be your one responsible source for all of your insurance needs. From a rocket engineer in California to several hospitals in Illinois, our personal lines team specializes in hard-to-place risks and high-net-worth clientele. With 2 locations and 20-plus agents, we can write in all 50 states to better serve our clients with needs in multiple states. Family owned and operated since 1962 and 4 generations carrying on the tradition of insurance. Celebrating our 60th year in the industry, we are truly proud of where we have come from and where we are going. With over 300 carriers nationwide, our agency can offer individuals and businesses more choices and better prices. ISU RMAC brings a wide variety of solutions to the table. For more information, visit us online at www.isu-rmac.com.
For our final segment on the David versus Goliath podcast. I can't believe we've already have, I think this is our 56th, 57th episode right now that we're doing the Q3 All-Stars here on David versus Goliath. It's just gone by so fast. It's all become a blur. And episode 55 was awesome. Just a few weeks back, I interviewed a gentleman by the name of Tommy. He used to be a stand-up comedian. He's now the CEO of Ops Analytica. This was a fun interview. Here it is. What I thought was fascinating is you mentioned the fact that you got a job on the Titanic. You didn't realize it. The guys who were at the top had no idea what they were doing. You were then given a task that you said, this doesn't make any sense. This is too difficult to do. I'm going to simplify the process. So A, you saw the problem. B, you created a solution. And then it started to work. And then you worked with consultants. And then you realized that the solution was too malleable. It was too many options that people were doing to it. It was bogging you down. It wasn't profitable. You said, time out, everyone out of the pool. We're going to figure out how to make this streamlined so it works for the vast majority of businesses that we're trying to target. And I tell people this all the time. One of the smartest people in the world told me, somebody will 100% pay you $100 million to solve a $1.5 billion problem. And that really is the nature of an entrepreneur, especially when it comes to technology, is what problem are you trying to solve for? How big of a number is that? And then somebody's going to give you a ton of money to solve that problem, right? Yeah. And what was really interesting to me over the year is how many people got bought out early. So I remember in the automotive space, it was primarily, managed by 2 companies. I think it still is to this day, ADP and Reynolds and Reynolds. And what they did, Tommy, is whenever a small company made great technology that would make their 15-year leases that they had with their server-side equipment that they were installing into dealerships, they would just go buy them for a stupid amount of money, and the owners never got to deliver it to the market. So the market never even knew it was available because the big guy was taking it out too early. Yeah. And that was one of the things that I fought for years in that industry. Truly a David versus Goliath story. But in your case, solving human problems, like with what you're trying to do, that is legitimately an efficiency creator. It's a time saver. It's going to be a relief for the businesses that once they get it set up for their process, because it becomes almost the way they train people at that point in time, I can imagine. Am I right in that? It becomes the primary training tool?
Well, so you still have training, but here's the problem with training, right? And we all know this. You can train people all day long. And that's what most businesses have done. They've relied heavier and heavier on training because they never had the control of the people at the location level, right? And so if you don't have the control of the people at the location level, then you have to go, okay, I have to now jump to what do I do have control over? Well, I can make everybody take a test and I can make everybody learn how this is supposed to work. But what you'll find is with most of these training programs is that people do the training and they don't change their behavior. Right. No. And so then you get zero value for the training. You feel good.
Or they change their behavior for 2 weeks and then they're back to their old bad habits.
Yeah, of course, because you feel good that you did it. It's like, you got to watch your sales guys, right? Because sales guys will work on collateral and they'll do all kinds of things to make them seem busy, but they won't do the actual work they need to do, which is like cold call and get people on the funnel, right? And it's the same kind of thing with training and ops. They do things that feel good, but they're not willing to do that. Sometimes people aren't willing to do the hard work that you actually need to do to be great, right? And so I looked at our platform as kind of what we would call operations management. And so our job is to now automate and systematize the daily operations, which generally were done on paper checklists and in giant manuals, and they kind of just happen haphazardly at the locations. We're trying to put some order and some system around that so that it tells you, hey, this is what you need to do, and this is when you need to do it. And if you do these things over time, you will catch more of your own mistakes before they affect customers, speed of service, or safety. And then guess what? You'll just have happier guest interactions. You'll do them quicker, and then you'll make more money over time.
Tommy, is it true that you in a past life were a stand-up comedian? Because I've always fancied myself as being a stand-up comedian, yet I've never done it. How many years did you do that for?
10. I did my first show August 12th, 1995. I had about 6 minutes of very dirty material. I did it in Baltimore at a club called Winchester's on Light Street. And I remember I made everybody laugh. It was maybe 10 people in the crowd. It's in a basement. About 6 of them were my friends. And I remember thinking to myself, this is the greatest thing you've ever done. Do not forget this. You want to be a stand-up comic. And literally in that night, I became a stand-up comedian. I was a professional stand-up comedian, even though I had done literally 5 minutes on stage. But I was like, that's all I want to do. It is the problem with doing it when you're older and more established is that it becomes so addictive at the beginning that like you literally would like throw everybody you know and everything you do like out the window just to get better at stand-up, right? So I luckily got into it very young. And so I didn't have anything else going on, but it is like truly addictive. And then, within 6 months, I'm out 4 to 5 nights a week doing open mics. And when I started, it was in the mid 90s. Like comedy's kind of gone through a weird thing. Like it was only in New York and LA in the 60s and early 70s. And then it started to pop up in some clubs around the country, the big clubs, the Zanies, the Comedy Works, early 80s. Then you have the explosion. Everybody's making money doing stand-up. Every bar's got stand-up. Jerry Seinfeld's making millions a year before he does Seinfeld, being a stand-up comedian. And then it just got so overplayed and it was on TV all the time and everything. In the 90s, it kind of cratered a little and went down. And then in the early 2000s with Chappelle and Chappelle's show, it kind of rose again, but it was just different. Like when I started, it was all about going on the road. So I would travel all over. I've done comedy in every state west of the Mississippi, except for Utah and Texas and a lot of the Northeast. You know what I mean? And like, I would just drive around. I would like go to Tucson for $200, from Denver to Tucson for $200, sleep on a couch, do 7 shows. But that's how you got stage time. You know what I mean? I would do 15 minutes a night, open the shows. So it was nuts.
And as long as you had a Quiznos, you were fine. And thank you for joining us on the Q3 All-Stars here on David versus Goliath. Next week is a brand new, fresh interview. We can't wait to see you. Until then, have an amazing day, and God bless.